Posted by you/sorry I'm just tired okay. There's no version of this that makes me look smart. That's the first thing I need you to know. I wasn't snooping. I wasn't searching for clues. I wasn't trying to catch anyone in a lie. I just had to pee. That's it. That's the whole reason I ended up in Roman's guest bathroom. The one with the stupid cactus-shaped soap and the framed quote that said, "Work hard, stay humble," which is rich coming from a guy who owns a Tesla he revs in parking garages. The party was still going strong in the living room. Music thumping, wine flowing, people laughing at jokes they didn't understand. I had just come out of the kitchen with a half-eaten skewer of something that definitely wasn't chicken, and my wife had just disappeared again with her little marketing brain trust, which apparently includes Roman, and exclusively Roman. So yeah, I went to the bathroom, closed the door, flipped the light on, and there it was. One single, rose gold earring on the edge of the sink. Tiny, teardrop-shaped, with a chipped crystal that had been missing since June. I know, because she ranted about how she couldn't find it for over an hour and swore it was definitely in the car. I stared at it like it had slapped me. My brain did a dozen backflips. I told myself it could be someone else's. I told myself I hadn't seen that exact design before. I even told myself Roman probably just had a girlfriend with very similar taste. But then I opened the medicine cabinet. Don't ask me why. Maybe I just needed to prove myself wrong. Inside, tucked behind a bottle of expensive aftershave and what looked like cologne you can't pronounce unless you studied in Paris, was a CVS bag. Inside that bag, a pair of flats. Beige, size 7. My wife's size. From a brand she buys exclusively because it doesn't make her ankles look weird. And in that moment, with that earring still sitting smugly on the edge of the sink, I felt it. Not rage. Not even sadness. Just that hollow, slippery sensation of something falling away. Like a wall collapsing behind you. And you know it's too late to turn around. Now here's the part one hate admitting the most. I didn't confront her. Not that night. I put the earring in my pocket. I walked out like nothing had happened. Smiled at Roman. Even clinked glasses with him. I watched him pat my wife's back like they'd just won an award together. She beamed. And I smiled too. Wide. Polite. Just like the idiot I clearly am. But I didn't go home when she did. I stayed behind. Told her I was getting a ride with Neil, the guy from accounts. Lied to her face while she kissed my cheek. And then I started watching. Because if this is what I accidentally found, I couldn't even imagine what was waiting for me on purpose. I didn't sleep that night. I lay in bed next to her, pretending my phone's blue light was TikTok, not Google searches for things like how to tell if your partner is cheating without confronting them or non-aggressive ways to catch a liar. I could hear her breathing, steady, almost theatrical. She always fakes being asleep when she doesn't want to talk. I used to think it was cute. Now it felt strategic. She had showered the second she got home. Said the party made her feel sticky. I don't know if she meant sweat or guilt. Maybe both. At 2:11 a.m., I went to the garage. Just stood there barefoot on the cold concrete, staring at the passenger seat of her car like it owed me answers. The floor mat still had glitter on it, left over from some party prop, maybe. Or maybe just the universe being obvious. I opened the glove box. There was a receipt for a lunch I didn't recognize, from a place we'd never been to. A small cafe about 20 minutes from both her office and mine. She hates sandwiches, but there was a panini on that receipt with her name on it. Next day, I called out of work. I told my cousin I had food poisoning. Technically not a lie. I felt sick, but not from food. I drove to that cafe, parked across the street, watched people come and go like some creep in a bad spy movie. At 1:14 p.m., Roman walked in. Alone. 15 minutes later, she joined him. My wife. My actual wife. Hair pulled back. Sunglasses on indoors. Laughing before she even reached the table. I watched through my windshield as she reached across and stole a fry from his plate. He didn't flinch. Like it wasn't new. Like it wasn't out of bounds. Like it was just normal. They sat there for 43 minutes. I counted every one. And here's the part that messed with me the most. They didn't kiss. They didn't touch. Nothing that would hold up in court, or even in a heated argument. But the energy between them? You can't fake that. You can't download an app to explain why your wife tilts her head differently for one man and not another. You just know. When she came home that night, I asked her how work was. She said, fine. I asked if she had lunch. She said, barely had time. Then she kissed me on the forehead like I was our dog. I sat with that for days, thinking maybe I was overreacting. Maybe I was inventing this whole narrative because I was bored or insecure or because my own life didn't feel exciting enough. But then I remembered something my grandfather told me once, back when I was a kid and I caught a neighbor sneaking tools out of our shed. He said, "There's no such thing as a coincidence when you're paying attention." So I paid attention. I waited for the next party, because I knew there would be one. These marketing types celebrate everything. New clients, promotions, dog birthdays. And sure enough, a week later, an invite came through her email. Q4 kickoff mixer, Roman's Place wine glass direct hit. She said, "I might skip this one. I'm exhausted." I said, "You should go. Blow off some steam." She looked at me for a beat too long, then smiled. "You sure?" I nodded. "Of course." But this time I followed her. Not in the way you think. I didn't trail her car with binoculars or crouch behind bushes. I just parked 3 blocks away and waited. Her car pulled up around 7:06 p.m. She got out, checked her makeup in the mirror, and walked up to his building like she'd done it before. Like she knew the way. I gave it 10 minutes. Then I called Roman's buzzer and pretended to be delivery. When someone buzzed me in, probably without even checking, I walked in, calm, quiet, steady. No plan, no rage. Just curiosity, heavy as concrete. That's when I heard it. Not voices. Not laughter. A song. Our wedding song. Playing softly, like background noise in a world I didn't recognize anymore. And that's when I knew something much worse than cheating was happening. I didn't go inside. Not yet. I stood in the stairwell, listening. The sound of that song, our song, muffled through the walls, made me feel like I was watching a scene from my own life through glass. Like someone had taken a memory of mine, stretched it, distorted it, and fed it back to me on a cheap speaker. It was a stripped-down version, acoustic, slower, almost haunting. And the fact that he was playing it, in his apartment, with my wife inside, that was the first time I truly wondered if I was still sane. I backed away slowly. My heart wasn't pounding. It wasn't fear. It was something colder, quieter, like something inside me had finally given up hoping this was all in my head. I walked back to my car, sat behind the wheel, and stared at the steering wheel for what felt like hours. The anger didn't come. The betrayal didn't come. Not yet. What came instead was clarity. The kind of clarity you only get when something dies. I wasn't there to rescue my marriage. I was there to dissect it. And you know what people forget? That curiosity, when it festers, becomes a sickness. The next morning, I didn't ask her how the party went. I didn't say a word about the night before. I watched her move around the kitchen like nothing had changed. She offered me toast, made coffee, even hummed, like she was still carrying the tune with her. I checked the pockets of the coat she wore the night before. Nothing. But I knew better than to expect clues that obvious. Tilda was careful, always had been. She double-checks locks, clears her browser history, has different passwords for everything. But nobody is perfect. A few days later, I noticed something. Her phone, which was normally glued to her hand like it was surgically attached, had started staying in her purse during dinner. I figured she was trying to act present, like some kind of guilty performance. But one night, when she was in the shower, I opened her bag, expecting nothing, and nearly dropped it when I felt something cold and rectangular tucked between the lining and the side panel. A second phone. No case. No stickers. No lock screen photo. Just black glass. It was off. Completely. Like it had been that way for a while. I held it in my hand, and for a moment, I thought about turning it on. But something in me said no. Not yet. You don't corner a snake while it's asleep. Instead, I put it back exactly how I found it, and zipped her purse shut. That was on a Thursday. On Friday, she told me she had an off-site strategy session the next morning. Saturday, 10 a.m. I nodded, told her good luck. She smiled, kissed my forehead again like I was some oblivious pet, and went to bed early. At 9:53 the next morning, I watched her car pull away. She didn't take the purse. She took a tote bag instead. I waited 10 minutes before grabbing her purse and pulling the phone out again. This time, I turned it on. No passcode. Maybe because she figured no one would ever find it. Or maybe she figured the only person who would was someone who'd already given up on asking questions. It booted slowly. I sat on the couch, staring at the loading screen like it was a portal. Then, finally, home screen. For apps. One contact. No browser. No camera. Just messages. Telegram. A calendar. And a notes app. The first message that popped up? Let me know if you're still thinking about the cabin. sent by someone saved as R. No emojis, no punctuation, just cold and familiar. I opened the Notes app, and what I saw wasn't a shopping list. It wasn't passwords. It was dates and places. Most of them I didn't recognize, but one of them was our anniversary. Next to it, in parentheses, said she was with Curtis, Lake House. Except we didn't go to the lake house this year. We didn't even celebrate our anniversary. She told me she had a last-minute pitch meeting and we could do something next weekend. But that next weekend came and went, and she never brought it up again. I locked the phone, put it back. She got home 3 hours later with a smoothie and a branded notepad from a hotel conference room, like she'd actually gone to a strategy session. I asked her how it went. She smiled, sat down, sipped her smoothie, and said, "Kind of a snooze fest, honestly." Then she asked if I wanted to watch something light. A comedy. To unwind. I nodded. But all I could think about was the word cabin. I didn't know where. I didn't know when. But if they had a cabin, it meant this wasn't just a fling. It wasn't about sex. It was a parallel life. And I had only just opened the first door. The worst part about knowing something you're not supposed to know is pretending you don't. I became a ghost in my own house. Not dramatic like in the movies. Not silent dinners or slammed doors. It was subtler than that. I answered when spoken to. I laughed when appropriate. I slept beside her like nothing was wrong. But inside I was peeling away layers. Hers, mostly. But a few of mine too. Because once I saw that phone, once I read those words, "Let me know if you're still thinking about the cabin," something broke open inside me. Not just suspicion. Not just betrayal. Something older. Something I hadn't looked at in years. I started to wonder when I stopped being someone worth staying loyal to. That weekend, she mentioned a friend's baby shower she had to make an appearance at. Said she wouldn't stay long, just had to show face. I nodded. Didn't even ask which friend. She used to list names. Now I only got categories. As soon as she left, I opened the Notes app again. The entry about the cabin hadn't changed, but the calendar had a new event. Sunday, 3 p.m., meet, Kestrel. That wasn't a name. Or at least, not one I recognized. I Googled it. Turns out Kestrel is a small breed of hawk. But it's also the name of a secluded Airbnb rental upstate, 2.5 hours away, hidden in the woods, no Wi-Fi. Marketed as a disconnected romantic reset. My stomach twisted. I clicked on the Telegram app. The most recent message was from R. Again. Do we still have the window? No reply from her yet. But that didn't mean anything. She could have answered in person. For all I knew, they weren't even messaging anymore, because they didn't have to. I checked the Airbnb listing. It was booked for the next weekend. I had to create an account just to find that out, and when I did, I stared at the blocked-out days like they were courtroom evidence. Someone had made that reservation, and I had a very strong guess who. I copied the address and saved it to my phone. Then I did something I hadn't done in a long time. I went down to the basement and pulled out the old Nikon camera she bought me 5 birthdays ago and I never used. I charged it, dusted it off, put a fresh SD card inside. That whole week, I said nothing. Not a word about Kestrel. Not about the phone. Not about the new earrings she found in an old drawer and wore like they didn't smell like someone else's cologne. I waited. And sure enough, on Friday, she brought it up casually over dinner. Next Saturday, she said, there's a team-building thing. Overnight. One night only. Roman rented out a space for us to do some off-the-grid strategy planning. She rolled her eyes as if even she thought it sounded ridiculous. We'll probably just end up drinking wine and arguing about fonts. I forced a smile. Sounds fun. She didn't even blink. The next Saturday, she left around noon. Said she was carpooling with 2 other people, but not Roman. That'd be weird. I nodded, as if that settled it. But I waited 10 minutes, then got in my car and started driving. I didn't know what I expected. I didn't even know what I'd do if I got there and saw them together. Maybe nothing. Maybe everything. The cabin was deeper in the woods than I thought. No signs. No clear markers. Just a long gravel road with too many turns and too few cell bars. When I finally saw it, a glass-fronted modern box sitting on a hill like it was too clean for the forest, I parked far enough away that the engine wouldn't be heard. I crept up the trail, camera in hand, breath held tight. What I saw wasn't what I expected. No romantic picnic. No soft music. No visible embrace. The front of the cabin was dark, but the side porch was lit up, and there they were. Roman, my wife, and a third person, older man, gray beard, Serious face. They weren't laughing. They weren't flirting. They were talking. Tense. Focused. My wife had a tablet. Roman had a folder. The older man kept gesturing like he was giving instructions. And then, I kid you not, Roman handed him an envelope. A thick one. I took 3 pictures. That's when my foot snapped a branch. The conversation stopped instantly. Roman looked up, squinted into the trees. I dropped, crawled backward like a child playing army, heart punching my ribs. I didn't wait to see what they did next. I made it to the car and drove. Didn't stop for gas. Didn't check my mirrors. Didn't breathe right until I was halfway home. This wasn't just an affair. This wasn't about feelings or passion or betrayal. Something else was going on. And I had just walked into it with both eyes open and no idea how deep it went. I didn't leave the camera on the counter like in the movies. I didn't storm into the kitchen waving blurry screenshots, demanding answers. I didn't say a single word about what I saw at the cabin. What would I even say? Hey, honey, why did you and your fake work husband hand a mysterious old man an envelope in the middle of the woods? Yeah, that wasn't going to end well. Instead, I started retracing the beginning. Not of her betrayal, of us. Because I had this creeping feeling now. A sick suspicion that this didn't start with Roman. That maybe Roman wasn't even the beginning of the lie. Maybe he was just part of the framework. A structure I had been living in for years without realizing every wall was hollow. That week, while she was at work, I opened the old storage bins in our guest room closet. Ones we hadn't touched since we moved in. She had labeled everything obsessively. College stuff, old bills, photo albums, junk drawer. I opened the one marked journals. She always kept them. Said writing helped her process. There were at least 7 of them, identical black hardcovers, all dated in silver Sharpie. I didn't know what I was looking for, only that I wasn't going to stop until I found something. The one from 2017 caught my eye. That was the year we almost broke up, the first time. It was over something stupid, or at least it seemed stupid at the time. I had taken on too many side jobs and canceled a vacation. She said she felt like I didn't value her time. I said she was being dramatic. She stayed at her sister's for a week. When she came back, we never talked about it again. But in that journal, there were 6 pages torn out between August and September. 6. The rest of the book was pristine, no rips, no water damage, no spills. Just clean handwriting, day after day. But those 6 missing pages were cleanly removed, like she'd used a blade. I flipped to the back pocket of the journal, one of those expandable sleeves that always seemed useless, and found a photo tucked inside. It was an old photo. Not worn, but definitely pre-digital. A baby, not a newborn. Maybe 2 years old, wearing a sun hat, sitting on a picnic blanket. And next to the baby, Roman. Younger, cleaner shaven, but unmistakably him. Holding the child's hand like it was his. Grinning at someone just outside the frame. I stared at it so long I forgot to blink. I turned it over. No date. No names. No writing at all. Just a photo. Hidden behind a torn-out chapter. I put everything back exactly the way I found it, then sat in the hallway, gripping my knees like I was trying to keep myself from dissolving. Because the timelines didn't match. According to Tilda, she met Roman in 2022. That's when her company merged with his. Before that, she barely mentioned him. Just said he was one of those brand guys who thinks fonts are emotions. So why did she have a photo of him with a baby from a decade ago? And more importantly, whose baby was it? I knew better than to ask her directly. She'd shut down, deflect, or worse, lie with confidence so smooth I'd second-guess my own sanity. So instead, I went looking for people who knew her back then. People I hadn't talked to in years. Her college roommate, Maya, was the first one I reached out to. I found her on LinkedIn. Sent a message under the pretense of wanting to plan something for Tilda's upcoming birthday. Maya replied within an hour. Said it was sweet of me to go the extra mile, and offered to hop on a quick call. I asked her, casually, about old friends Tilda used to hang out with. Colleagues, exes, roommates. She listed a few names. None were Roman. Then I asked, did she ever mention a guy named Roman? Maybe back in the day? There was a pause. One of those dangerous, weighted silences that's louder than words. Finally, Maya said, oh, wow. Yeah, but I didn't think they kept in touch. Why? I don't want to get in the middle of anything, Curtis. You're not. I'm planning something, and I don't want to bring up bad history. She hesitated again. Then, they dated. Briefly. When she was interning in Chicago. It wasn't super serious, but it ended messy. She never talked about it much, just said he was intense. Controlling. How long were they together? 6, 7 months maybe? But that was, what, 2013? My stomach flipped. The same year the baby photo must have been taken. I hung up as politely as I could. Then I went back to the photo, stared at it again. That wasn't just a coincidence. That wasn't just a remnant of an old relationship. This wasn't her first lie. It might be the longest one she ever kept. And if she was hiding a whole life with Roman from before we even met, what else had she buried? Because something told me that baby wasn't just a friend's kid, and Roman wasn't just an ex. They were building something long before I showed up. And I was never supposed to know. I've never been good with computers. I still handwrite invoices for my cabinetry jobs. Tilda teases me about it. Used to, anyway, said I belong in a different century. But desperation is a hell of a teacher. And within days, I had taught myself how to reverse image search, how to find cached web pages, and how to dig through property records using nothing but zip codes and rabbit holes. It started with that baby photo. The one I found hidden in her journal, stuffed like a landmine behind torn-out pages. I stared at Roman's face in it for hours. Not the smile, the posture. There's a difference between holding a baby and owning the moment. He wasn't awkward. He wasn't doing it for the camera. He looked like he belonged there. That's what got me. And then there was the envelope at the cabin. I replayed that memory in my head like a crime scene. What if it was a crime scene? What if this was more than emotional betrayal? What if I was already in the middle of something I couldn't get out of? So I did something I promised myself I wouldn't do. I used her laptop while she was asleep. She's paranoid with her phone, but the laptop? She thinks I can barely open Safari. I waited until 2 a.m. She was out cold. I plugged in headphones and sat cross-legged in the hallway so the glow wouldn't wake her. Her desktop background was a photo of us from years ago, a beach we never returned to. I ignored the ache in my stomach and opened her browser. That's when I saw it. Her search history was clean, too clean. Like, recently wiped clean. But she'd forgotten to sign out of a secondary Google account. Not her main one. A burner, probably. I opened it. Emails. Sparse, but strange. Subject lines like confirming ID check, all names match the lease, and final payment due in cash. No inbox threads, just outbound messages. She was using it to coordinate something under the table. Something involving cash and leases. And none of the emails were to Roman. They were to a woman named Glenna Keel. I froze. I had never heard that name before. I clicked into Glenna's profile. A few things came up: an old business license in Indiana, a registered pet grooming service that dissolved in 2019, and then something that made my mouth go dry. A police blotter from 2011. Domestic disturbance. No charges filed. Name listed: Glenna Keel. Other name associated with the address: Roman Keel. That was it. That was the break. Roman wasn't Roman. He was using his middle name. His legal last name was Keel. I checked corporate filings. His LLCs were under R. J. Keel. Every trace of his public-facing brand identity, his design firm, his portfolio, his TEDx talk, was under the pseudonym Roman Shore. I couldn't sleep after that. I stared at the ceiling until the sun came up, wondering who my wife had actually gotten involved with, and why she was now emailing his mother. That morning, she kissed me on the cheek, told me she'd be home late, and left with her usual perfume cloud trailing behind her. I waited 10 minutes, then opened the laptop again and dug deeper into Glenna. Turns out she lived in a trailer outside Fort Wayne. Nothing fancy. I found a satellite image. The lawn was dead. The house next door had a Confederate flag. But what caught my attention was the business address listed for the dissolved pet grooming license. Same as the trailer. I wanted to believe it was irrelevant, that it was just a coincidence. That my wife, the woman I met at a charity wine auction, who once cried watching an ad about rescue dogs, wasn't laundering money through the mother of a man who faked his identity. But that kind of naivety doesn't survive 6 parts into a story like this. Later that night, she came home with takeout. Thai, my favorite. She sat across from me like everything was fine. I tried to match her energy, but I could barely chew. My throat was tight. My brain was louder than the TV. So I asked her casually, "Hey, did you ever know anyone named Keel?" She blinked. "What? Keel? I think I saw the name on one of your old Facebook photos." There was a pause. Small, but I caught it. "Nope," she said, too fast. "Doesn't ring a bell." And then she smiled. And this part still gives me chills, like she knew I was fishing, but wasn't ready to let me reel anything in yet. The next morning, the camera was gone. Not the bag, not the charger, just the Nikon. I didn't confront her. I didn't say anything. Because now I understood, this wasn't an affair. This wasn't even just about lies. This was about something they built together. Years ago, before me, maybe even because of me. And whatever it wasn't finished yet. I told her I was going to help my cousin with a kitchen install 3 towns over. Told her it might be an overnighter if the plumbing ran long. She didn't ask questions. She barely looked up from her laptop. Just said, "Sounds good," and asked me to bring her back one of those cinnamon rolls from the bakery she pretends she doesn't like. I packed a bag with clothes, a notebook, the Nikon spare memory card, and a burner phone I'd bought at a gas station that morning. I turned off location on everything. I wasn't going off the grid. I was just stepping around it. The drive to Indiana felt like watching my own life disappear in the rearview mirror. The farther I got from the city, the quieter everything became, until eventually the only thing filling my head was the sound of tires on cracked blacktop and my own looping thoughts. I got to Fort Wayne just before sunset. The address from the pet grooming license was still active in the public registry. Glenaquille, 1 mobile home, lot number 14. The place looked like it had been held together with stubbornness and duct tape. Paint peeled off the siding. One of the windows was boarded up with a sheet of OSB and a "No trespassing" sign spray painted in red. There were wind chimes that didn't move, even when the breeze kicked up. A folding chair sat by the door, empty. I parked across the street and waited. No lights. No sound. I thought maybe she'd moved, or maybe I had just come too late. Then I saw the curtain shift. Just once. Like someone inside was checking to see if I'd leave. I got out of the car. Knocked once. No answer. Knocked again. This time, I heard movement. Not footsteps, but something scraping the floor. When the door opened, it only cracked an inch. A woman's voice. "You lost?" "No, ma'am," I said. "I think I know your son." Silence. Then, slow and dry. "I don't have a son." I paused. Then I said the name. "Roman." Another silence. Longer this time. Then the door opened fully. She looked older than her age, worn down in that specific way only grief and cigarettes can manage. Her eyes were sharp, though. Sharp like someone who's had to survive people she once trusted. She didn't invite me in. Just stood there, staring at me like I was a riddle she didn't want to solve. "You're not a cop," she said. "No. You're not press." "No. You with Tilda?" That nearly made my knees give out. "So you do know her?" She didn't answer. Just opened the screen door wider and jerked her chin toward the old lawn chair. I sat. She didn't. She leaned against the frame and lit a cigarette with fingers that trembled just enough to make me notice. "You hear about the boy?" she asked. "The boy in the photo?" Her eyes twitched, but she didn't flinch. "His name was Caleb." I froze. He was my grandson. There was a silence then that didn't feel human. It was too big, too final. I wanted to ask what happened, but my throat locked. So she filled it for me. "He died in 2014. Drowned. They called it an accident." "They?" She looked at me like I was the dumbest man alive. "You think those two ever lived in a world where things just happened?" I didn't speak. They didn't mean for it to happen, but they sure as hell meant to leave it behind. Roman changed his name. Tilda moved states. They scrubbed everything. And you know what the worst part is? They got better after it. Happier. Like burying him untied whatever was holding them down. "But why hide it?" I asked. "Why erase him?" She looked at me, and for the first time, her voice cracked. "Because if they didn't, they'd have to carry it. And those two? They only carry what keeps them moving forward." I sat there, feeling like my body had turned to glass. Every part of me was vibrating, breaking. She stubbed out her cigarette, then finally said, "There's a cemetery behind the trailer park. Go look. Row 7. Third from the back." I did. The grave was real. Simple. Small. No last name. Just Caleb. 2012 to 2014. The sky borrowed you for a while. I stood there for a long time. Long enough that my legs went numb. Long enough that I heard the wind change. It carried something with it. Maybe memory. Maybe just the illusion of one. A boy. 2 years old. A picnic blanket. A mother who doesn't speak of him. A father who hides his own name. And me, the idiot who married a woman who never once mentioned she had a child, let alone buried one. I didn't cry. Not there. I cried in the car. Quiet, ugly, helpless sobs. Not for Caleb. I didn't know him. But for the fact that I should have. That I lived beside a woman who wore grief like perfume. Invisible unless you leaned in close. And even then, it only made you dizzy. When I got home, she was asleep. Or pretending. Either way, I stood in the doorway and watched her breathe, wondering if somewhere in her dreams, she ever says his name. And if she does she say it like she means it? I didn't confront her that night. I couldn't. I didn't trust myself to say the right thing, or to say anything that wouldn't burn the whole house down. I watched her sleep instead, and I didn't see a monster, or a liar, or a stranger. I saw someone who'd been carrying a weight too heavy for one body. Someone who'd folded her pain so small it disappeared into the seams of her life. Someone who had lived 1,000 lives, and never invited me into any of them. I wanted to be angry. I wanted to scream. But I just felt tired. The next morning, I didn't wait for her to leave. I made coffee. I poured 2 cups. And I sat at the table. When she walked into the kitchen, still in her robe, still half asleep, I said the words like I'd rehearsed them in a mirror. I know about Caleb. She stopped moving. Completely. No flinch. No gasp. Just silence. Heavy, thick, unmoving. And then she sat down. Her hands trembled just slightly as she reached for the mug, but she didn't lift it. She didn't ask how I knew. She didn't deny it. She didn't cry. She said, "You weren't supposed to know." Why? Because you would have loved him. And that would have destroyed me. That's when the tears came, not hers, but mine. Quiet ones. Because I finally understood something I hadn't all along. Her silence wasn't cruelty. It wasn't deception. It was survival. We talked for hours. No yelling. No guilt games. Just 2 people finally laying down the weapons they'd both been secretly holding for years. She told me everything. About Roman, whose real name was Joshua Roman Keel. About Caleb. About how they weren't ready. About how the lake trip was supposed to be a reset for their crumbling relationship, not a farewell. About the panic, the fear, the silence that followed. How they split up not long after the funeral. How she changed her name. Changed her story. Started over. She told me she never meant to fall in love again. That I was supposed to be a chapter, not a whole book. But I was kind. And patient. And I asked so little. So she let herself believe it didn't matter anymore. But it did, I said. It does. I know, she whispered. That's what scared me. We didn't split up. That surprises people when I tell them. Most expect some dramatic exit, some revenge arc, some final act of self-respect. But what they don't understand, what I didn't understand, until I saw that grave, is that sometimes the bravest thing you can do isn't walking away. It's staying and rebuilding something that was never honest to begin with, but could still be real. We started therapy. Separate, then together. She let me ask anything. I let her cry, even when I didn't understand what triggered it. We visited Caleb's grave together a month later. She brought sunflowers. I brought silence. And Roman? He left the company. Moved to Oregon, apparently. I didn't follow. I didn't need to. Some things don't require justice. Just distance. I thought learning the truth would break me. But it didn't. It freed me. I stopped waiting for my life to make sense and started building something new from the parts that remained. My business grew. I took more time off. I reconnected with friends I hadn't spoken to in years. I started sleeping better. And when I woke up next to her, I stopped pretending and started choosing her. Every morning, with full knowledge of the weight she carries. And she chooses me back. Not out of guilt, not out of fear, but out of something deeper, something honest, something real. That boy, Caleb, he existed. He mattered. And now, he's no longer a ghost buried in the seams of her story. He's a part of mine too. And I carry him forward, not as a wound, but as a reminder that even from the deepest grief, something beautiful can still grow.